why we tolerated the former intelligence agency heads becoming part of the mainstream political debate, if you can call their assault on a president personally part of the mainstream debate. But they were attacking him vigorously, viciously, unrelentingly, and it is a spectacle we have never, as I said, witnessed before, and I can't imagine that we'll ever permit again. It is the agencies themselves have so much to answer for. If there was indeed Russian meddling in the election, quote unquote, why in the world didn't our agencies, those three agencies in particular, know about it and do something about it to forestall it, to prevent it, or to at least carry out retribution for that under President Obama? This was on his watch, not President Trump's. And President Obama has much to answer for in leaving behind a group of intelligence agency directors who carried on the ideological assault publicly and without precedent in American history.
So, Lou, finally, Clapper and Brennan are now not government employees, but employees of television news networks. Right. You and I are also employees of television news networks.
Probably
Have you applied for a top secret security clearance? Should I apply for a top secret security clearance?
I personally, I think I've said this to you before, I'm going to hold out for subpoena power. I will leave it to you and others to preserve the security clearances.
Okay. I hope you get it, by the way. Lou Dobbs, thank you very much.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Tucker.
If you're watching television today, you will have noted that the press is framing this question, whether or not John Brennan ought to have a top secret security clearance, as an unprovoked assault on democracy itself. Here's a selection.
What we witnessed from the White House podium today was a brazen act of intimidation.
The way that Sarah Huckabee Sanders rolled this out was almost in a tone to be threatening to the rest of us.
Yanking their security clearance just because he doesn't like being criticized is authoritarianism in its purest form.
The president sent his White House press secretary out there today to basically poop on the people from the press secretary podium and not only threaten, like they didn't just make a threat, it was a promise.
What you just watched is a precise inversion of the traditional role of the press. Journalists ought to be skeptical of the powerful. They ought to demand accountability and clear explanations from secretive bureaucrats like John Brennan and from the agency he once worked for. But they're not. Instead, they have become Brennan's faithful handmaidens, arguing that he and his colleagues in the intelligence world are not bound by the same rules that you and I are. The intelligence establishment does what it wants, they tell us. Your job is to obey. They are in charge. You are a serf. They spy on you without limit. You accept a life with no privacy. But don't complain. Insolence is disloyalty. Dissent is treason. That is the message on every other channel. That is state media, the definition of it. Dan Bongino is a former Secret Service agent and the author of the new book, Spygate, The Attempted Sabotage of Donald J. Trump. Dan, thanks a lot for coming on tonight. It seems to me if the press has any role at all, it's to make certain that people who've amassed an enormous amount of power to affect your life, ought to be under relentless scrutiny. And yet what they're telling us on the other channels all day long is that it's somehow immoral for us to ask obvious questions like, why would John Brennan have a security clearance as an NBC employee? Why are they tamping down any effort to ask obvious questions about what our government is doing?
Well, you would think so, Tucker, but we're dealing with a modern-day Pravda. You understand that John Brennan was the puppet master of the entire scheme to violate the civil liberties of Donald Trump and his team? John Brennan was that guy. John Brennan, Tucker, tweeting today about his principles. I thought it was a joke. I had to check for the blue check mark. John Brennan has no principles. This is a disgraceful human being who nearly destroyed the reputation of the intelligence community. Tucker, on August 25th of 2016, John Brennan himself, this is a fact, it's public record, went and briefed Harry Reid up on the Hill about elements in the dossier that then made it into a letter from Harry Reid to the FBI that was used as a predicate to spy on the Trump team. And we're supposed to trust this guy? This guy should get off Twitter and hire a lawyer.
Well, but I also thought we were supposed to be impressed by him. I mean, I don't call me naive, but I grew up imagining the heads of our intel agencies were sophisticated and intelligent. Everything I have ever read by John Brennan is banal. It's a cliche, it's pompous, it's stupid. He doesn't seem like an impressive person. How did he wind up running the most powerful intel agency in the world? Do you know?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure, because when I worked in the White House, I remember crossing paths with Brennan and found him to be a narcissistic fool, just like he is now. This man is really a disgrace and a stain on the United States, whose legacy will only be as a cautionary tale told to future CIA leaders about how not to act. Tucker, keep in mind, too, back as far back as 2015, left-wing reporters, because they thought they had a Trump collusion conspiracy, which never existed, were reporting on Brennan's contacts with foreign intel about Trump and his relationship with the Russians that never came to fruition. Suspiciously, some of those foreign intelligence heads resigned right after the Donald Trump election, rather abruptly. They were communicating with John Brennan, who, by the way, also is on the record saying on TV with Chuck Todd and others and in media appearances that he still has no hard evidence of collusion, yet he weaponized the government in order to attack Donald Trump. He needs to slither away quickly.
How's the next president going to deal with this? I mean, now that, the veil has been removed and we have some sense of what's going on beneath, will any president ever trust any intel agency ever again not to undermine him?
Tucker, I'm not sure about that. And that's really what upsets me, having served under two Democratic presidents as a Secret Service agent. And listen, I'm a sinner like everyone else. I'm not looking for your pat on the back or anyone in your audience. The taxpayers paid me well to do it. I never once thought, even in my own books, about taking a personal shot at Barack Obama using my experiences. Never. You just don't do that. When you sign up for public service, no less run the CIA, and then you turn around and turn to Twitter to attack the sitting president? No, he's a stain on the country. We deserve better than this.
I think that's right. Dan, thank you very much for that.
Yes, sir.
Paul Manafort has spent the last weeks in a hole in prison, solitary confinement. What did he do? Well, tax evasion. The average tax evader sentenced in U.S. court gets a year and 3 months in jail. Paul Manafort is facing 305 years in jail. And yet, the adults accused of running a child abuse compound in New Mexico out on bail. Are politics playing a role in the application of justice? Plus, Andrew Cuomo says America was never great, never that impressive. Hillary Clinton endorsed another attack on American symbols. The degradation continues, and so does our coverage. Stay tuned. In an order just published, a New Mexico state judge called Sarah Backus granted bail to 5 dependents who are accused of holding 11 children, all of them malnourished, at a desert compound in rural New Mexico. Some of the defendants allegedly were training those kids to commit mass shootings. At least one child appears to have died at the compound. But now, remarkably, all 5 adults are free to go on a $20,000 bond. For perspective, that is low. Paul Manafort, by contrast, is currently on trial for tax evasion. That's a crime that is a crime, but as we noted in the last segment, the average sentence for tax evasion in this country is a year and 3 months. Paul Manafort is facing over 300 years in prison for that, and a federal judge placed him in solitary confinement for several weeks. The difference is probably political. Manafort is being punished in part for helping to elect Donald Trump, and that seems to be a more profound crime than starving children or training them to be terrorists. Joe DeGeneva is a former U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia, and he joins us tonight. Joe, the last thing you want to think is that justice is unequally applied, but you see things like this happen, and it's hard to reach any other conclusion.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt about that, Tucker. We are at a strange time in our history. We have the unfortunate Hillary Clinton investigation where she clearly got a pass by the FBI because she was a Democrat and they wanted her to be president. We have the unfortunate situation where they then decided they were going to frame Donald Trump. They went about it, and if Hillary had been elected, we would have never known about this scheme to unconstitutionally subvert an election. And then you have this goofy judge in New Mexico who decides that 5 5 of the defendants in this case, who clearly were grooming young terrorists and ruining their lives, should be out on bond. This woman moved from San Francisco to New Mexico, and when she did that, she took some of the crazy turf from San Francisco and moved it to lovely New Mexico, and look what we got.
It's dispiriting for the rest of us, but it also makes you wonder, are you a fool for obeying the law? So here there's a new move in the Congress to radically reduce the sentences of drug traffickers. That story is going to break tomorrow. For the past year, you've seen people argue in public that breaking our immigration law is not really a crime. And in fact, you're the criminal if you think it's wrong that they're breaking the law. So why are the rest of us so assiduously following the letter of the law? Are we fools for doing that?
We are not. We believe in the Constitution. We believe in the history of this country. We believe that there should be one system of justice. We believe that everybody should be held accountable, no matter how high, no matter how low their station in life. No, actually, Tucker, we're the good guys. And I'm happy to associate myself with the good guys. I love the good FBI agents who enforce the law equally, and I don't like people like James Comey and Sally Yates who don't. So we just have to keep fighting. This is a long, tough slog, which has resulted from 50 years of liberal education at grade schools, high schools, and college, the academy in the hands of the leftists, and they are graduating idiots into our society. Civics isn't taught anymore, and this is where we end up.
You're exactly right. And I was getting cynical for a moment, but you made me feel better. Thank you. That was inspiring, actually. I mean it. Thank you. Great to see you.
You're welcome.
Donald Trump said he would make America great again. Now, top Democrats reply by saying this country was actually never great, and the crowd cheers. Is that a winning campaign message? We'll mull it over next.
We're not going to make America great again. It was never that great. We have not reached greatness. We will reach greatness when every American is fully engaged.
Donald Trump's first presidential campaign vowed to make America great again, of course. His second vows to keep America great. Democrats now have a response to that. Today, the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, offered one. Actually, America, not impressive at all. Cuomo's office later released a statement saying the governor does think America is great, but that is a sham. He spoke. The crowd applauded. He basked. For the left, bashing America's entire history is winning political rhetoric. They believe the wrong kind of people lived here then, and they're not shy about saying so. Lawrence Jones is a radio host, and he joins us tonight. Lawrence, do you think, just as a political matter, leaving aside the objective questions about how great America was or is now, do you think that's a winner to get up and say, you know what, kind of a crappy country, actually? Is that the kind of thing that gets people to the polls?
Well, it depends on who you're trying to get to the polls, Tucker. If you're trying to get average day citizens that, believe in America, believe in the ideals of America, then maybe it's not the best strategy. But if you're going to a full-blown socialist agenda where you want to fundamentally change America as it is, because if I'm quite honest, Tucker, that's what this all is about. They don't like America because they don't like the ideas of America. They want us to become a socialist country, which is really anti-American. That there's nothing further than to the left and far away from America than the socialist agenda.
But isn't that kind of the opposite of the person you want leading you? I mean, if the coach of your team thought the team was terrible, had contempt for the players, if the officer in charge of a platoon thought his men were unimpressive and their lives were worthless, I mean, those would be really bad leaders. You don't want someone running your country who has contempt for the country, do you?
Yeah, you don't. But this is a new age. We're not talking about reasonable people. I mean, these are people that believe that the Constitution needs to be ripped up. They believe that ICE needs to be dismantled. They hate law enforcement. They hate the freedom of speech. These people don't believe in the ideal of America, if you see where I'm getting at. And so if they can get us to some type of third world country, some socialist Venezuela, because that's essentially what's going to happen. You're going to destroy the country with this agenda. They will be totally fine because in their eyes, the theory works.
I have to say, I mean, I'm focused on Cuomo because he's obviously so unimpressive. By the way, his father, Mario Cuomo, in his famous 1984 address to the Democratic Convention, said exactly the opposite. He celebrated the opportunities America had given his family. But Cuomo's not alone. Today, Hillary Clinton tweeted in support of a girl who kneeled during her school's Pledge of Allegiance. She said this, quote, "It takes courage to exercise your right to protest injustice, especially when you're 11. Dopey exclamation point. Keep up the good work, Mariana." So when you kneel for the Pledge of Allegiance, what exactly are you protesting? What, quote, injustice are you protesting, I wonder?
Well, I try not to get into kids and getting involved in the political process.
I agree.
I think it's fun, you know. But if we're going to go with the liberal talking point of the injustice in this country, talking about the criminal justice issue, why don't we ask Hillary Clinton, where was she when her husband was declaring the war on drugs, which dismantled many communities? Where was she when she supported liberal mayors like in Baltimore, where there's corruption, not just in the local government, but the local businesses, where the rich, powerful, and well-connected play by different rules, why black kids and black families and their families are dismantled, while people that look like them say, hey, I'm for you guys, but they vote differently. They are partnering with the lobbyists, the special interest group, really not helping the community. So Hillary Clinton, instead of you taking a knee and getting behind an 11-year-old, why don't you tell us about your policies and that your husband and you support so much?
So if your idea, I mean, this is a sincere question, but if you were 70 years old, you're looking back on your life and you realized, hey, my ideas produced Baltimore, how would you feel about yourself? Wouldn't you feel contrite?
Well, you should feel real horrible, but these people don't feel like it's their fault. In the eyes of them, this is the Republicans' fault. Even though they have controlled cities like Baltimore, Chicago, and I would admit, the cities suck. They are in a bad shape.
Yes, they do.
It's because they won't get away from that agenda. They aren't for the community, and they allow people that look like me say that they're for the community, but they're really not. And I would say the right should be cautious of the same thing. We have people that act like they're for the conservative movement. They look like me. They say they're black conservative, but when you look at their profile, they're trying to take away liberties as well. So it's not a party thing. It's about an American thing. And if we're going to believe in the values that were founded in this country. Now, liberals would tell me, well, Lawrence, it wasn't founded for you. Like the Second Amendment is not for you. Well, guess what? The Second Amendment is mine now, and I don't intend on giving it back to you guys.
The great Lawrence Jones, ladies and gentlemen. Great to see you. Amen.
Thanks, Tucker.
Vermont, one of the smallest states, may soon have the country's first. Well, the creepy porn lawyer's back in the news, a terrifying creature who draws power from appearing on television. It's his source. It's his lifeblood. One of his powers is teleportation, apparently. Last week, CPL was in Iowa, laying the groundwork for a presidential run next cycle. Now, this weekend, he'll be doing the very same thing in the Granite State, speaking at a Democratic Party of New Hampshire picnic. In his announcement, the creepy porn lawyer calls himself an entrepreneur. Pretty funny, tainting yet another once noble calling. You'll have to buy a ticket to attend the president. But brace yourself now. The creepy porn lawyer says that children under 12 will be admitted for free. Now, we're not lawyers here, so we can't comment upon whether that's legal or not, but it's certainly creepy. Well, in Vermont's Democratic primary yesterday, voters nominated Christine Hallquist as a candidate to be the country's first transgender governor. But the real story here is that Hallquist has tweeted nasty things repeatedly about this country's largest and very much embattled religious faith, Christianity. Hallquist repeatedly bashed Christians, tweeting this, quote, "And we worry about Sharia law, double exclamation point. Radicalized Christians are a part of the American landscape and we tolerate it," suggesting we shouldn't tolerate it, whatever that means. In response to a story about a mother stabbing her son, Hallquist tweeted this, "I'll bet she calls herself a Christian." Other tweets denounce Christian hypocrites or called even evangelists crazy. Robin Biro is a former Obama regional campaign director. Chadwick Moore is a conservative journalist from New York City, and they both join us tonight. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming on. Robin, first to you. Clearly,
Yes,
there are Christians who are not worth defending. That's for certain. The Westboro Baptist freaks or whatever. But what I'm so struck by is that well, there's no defending that, but in the speech codes that all of us live under, I think you'll have to admit the only religion that you can attack is Christianity. If she had subbed in another great world religion, one of the other two Abrahamic faiths, or she put Christians in there, she'd be out of the race tomorrow. Why is that?
You know, that's tricky. I looked at all of the texts that referenced the Christianity that she had sent out. And she did. You were correct to lead up to the story to say that she tweeted about a mother who killed her son because he was gay, and apparently she was a Christian, and this went against her religious beliefs. That certainly is radical and wrong and reprehensible. And you were absolutely correct to call out Westboro, who pickets, you know, the funerals of fallen soldiers.
But there are like 6 of them.
Funerals.
I mean, let's be real.
Yeah, exactly.
And by the way,
these
I've
are
always thought they're probably
elements.
liberals. Yeah.
Well, you know, these are the most fringe elements. She's calling them out. You know, I don't want to besmirch her free right to speech. You know, as a transgender woman, she's come under a lot of criticism.
No, well, I don't know if she has or not. I think she's celebrated for it, actually. Let's stop pretending. Of course she is celebrated for it. But let me ask you, I'm not attacking this person. I'm just saying, if Chadwick, if you're upset about people killing others for being gay, and I think we should be upset about that, it's awful.
Yes.
Is Christianity the primary offender there? Or even
I'm pretty sure, no, it's not close at all. I'm pretty sure there's another large world religion that is pretty much known for it.
But could you say that?
I don't know if I'm allowed to even say the name of it without getting harassed by the SPLC and God knows who else. You're absolutely right to acknowledge Hallquist's transgender privilege. She can get away with many, many things simply by being transgender. I mean, who knows if that's even how she won this primary. But while the entire country is fixated on the fact that she's transgender, nobody knows anything about her policies. In fact, all we can think of, all we know, well, yeah, you know that she's for Medicaid for all. She's for, she's a climate alarmist. She believes in $15 minimum wage, and that's kind of it. I mean, she was on CNN this morning, looking half dead. You could probably just very low energy. She was on CNN this morning, and she couldn't even answer the question about what socialism is. She said, "I don't know what socialism is. I'm not qualified." She was asked if she believed in capitalism, and she couldn't even answer that question. Who is this person? All we know is it's someone who's transgender, and let's just celebrate that. Can they lead the entire state of Vermont?
What would happen, Robin, if she had said there is a great world religion that actually has a long and recent track record of murdering gay people, and she just said that?
Yes.
What would her fellow Democrats have said to her, I wonder?
Are you talking about the Muslim faith?
I'm talking about the one Abrahamic faith that has a long and recent track record of murdering gays. Yeah, that would not be Christianity or Judaism. What would happen if she said that's factually true? Would she be considered brave for saying that?
It's actually true. In my opinion, yes. You know, I'm a veteran, of course. That's a problem. So, you know, she would have been correct to have asserted that, just as she is correct to call out people like Westboro Church and some of the radical extremists. They're radical extremists in every religion, and I think that when you become radicalized, regardless of your faith, I think that's a problem. Just like Westboro Church, as you were very correct to point out.
You're talking about
that's a problem.
But that's not actually true. I mean, in this country. And in Western Europe, at least to speak for two regions, in the last 20 years anyway, there hasn't been a lot of Christian terrorism, actually. There's been a lot of Islamic terrorism. It's not an attack on all Muslims. I like a lot of Muslims. But let's be real. But you can't be honest, can you, Chadwick? I mean, there's a penalty for just stating the obvious and the factually true.
Well, I don't understand this sort of left-wing LGBT obsession with Christians. I imagine a lot of it comes from, Hallquist talks about growing up in a Catholic school and because he was an effeminate little boy. In his words, getting a bunch of garbage from the nuns and the priests. Okay, fine. The difference between left-wing LGBTs and conservative and libertarian LGBTs is we can actually grow up and get over it and move on. And we don't still blame all of our problems on things that happen to us for children. Obviously, Christianity has moved leaps and bounds. American society in general has moved leaps and bounds from probably when Hallquist was a child, yet you still blame, like, why are you blaming an entire religion for all of your problems? And yeah, you're right. These radicalized Christians, there's like 10 of them in the country. Who cares?
Gentlemen, I'm sorry we're out of time. I appreciate both you coming on. Thank you, Robin.
Thank you so much, Tucker.
Plastic straws have been banished from public life with shocking speeds, but there's a new target: balloons. almost as dangerous as straws. You thought you had enough to worry about? Oh, no. Kathy Rue, our liberal Sherpa, joins us next to explain balloons are terrifying. Stay tuned. Well, the revolution's moving awful fast. Almost overnight, plastic straws have been pushed out of restaurants across America. In the most progressive places, an unauthorized straw can get you prison time. That's right, behind bars for using a straw. But the left is not ready to stop. They have a new target: helium balloons, sign of childhood and happiness for millions of Americans. But activists say that balloons returning to Earth eventually hurt the environment and harm animals. One town in Rhode Island, which has solved all of its other problems, has already banned balloon sales. Kathy Rue is not confused by this. She is the founding publisher of Catalina magazine. She's our liberal Sherpa, and she's going to guide us through the Himalayas of progressive thought tonight as she explains why we must ban balloons. Kathy, it's great to see you.
Hey, good to see you.
So most of us, when we think balloons, don't think environmental disaster. We think 8-year-old birthday party. Why should we hate and fear helium balloons?
I don't think we should fear them. I mean, seabirds and turtles should fear them because they die. So they should actually fear these balloons because they die when they choke on these balloons, when they come back to the ground and they're attracted to these bright colors and they choke. So they should be feared. The animals should fear these balloons. We should not care for them because, I mean, really, they serve no purpose. They are not biodegradable. It takes about 10 to 20 years for them to degrade. So they actually are just another form of litter, just like plastic straws. Balloons are litter.
I think I'm sensing a theme here. The things the left wants to ban are also, maybe not coincidentally, the things that bring ordinary people joy, like tobacco or drinking straws or balloons. I wonder if maybe banning humor or human happiness might not just be a shortcut to get to the goal that the left is looking for. Do you think?
Well, a sustainable future relies on happiness and humor, but not balloons. So, no, I think happiness is allowed. But, I mean, it's illegal in many places to throw rice at weddings. Now we throw seeds because we don't want the birds to choke. And rice had been around since Roman times for weddings. So balloons have been around since the 1800s.
It's illegal to throw rice at weddings? That must be a Massachusetts
in some towns.
law.
No, I think actually in some places in Texas, yeah. So, yeah, rice at weddings is illegal, and that's been around since Roman times. So balloons have been around only since the 1800s. So we can get rid of balloons. I mean, no one's going to miss them.
I wonder, have progressive scientists studied the level of carbon emissions produced by human laughter? and I wonder if we discovered that laughing was warming the Earth, would we ban it?
I don't think there's a study on that, but there have been studies on the lifespan of litter, and that's why we are banning straws and balloons, and probably diapers are going to be replaced with cloth diapers. Bottles, glass bottles actually take 1 million years to biodegrade, so glass bottles might be on their way out. But yeah, that's why a lot of companies are switching.
Let me ask you really quick, why does nobody, I totally get that, and I actually hate litter, which is one of the reasons I'm so against illegal immigration. And produces a huge amount of litter. Huge amount of litter. Balloons. And I mean that with total sincerity. But why is nobody ever trying to ban iPhones or Lululemon yoga pants or running shoes or any of the accessories of the idle rich in our country? Do you ever notice that? Those don't degrade very well either. But instead it's kids' balloons.
Well, I don't think 10,000 Lululemon pants are being flown into the air and killing the wildlife and hurting our future. So I don't think they're hurting tomorrow. Not yet.
Well, they wind up in landfills, ultimately, like every season when they come out with a new kind of Lululemon stretch pants. Like, you got to buy the new ones, you throw the old ones away. More likely give them to your housekeeper, and they wind up in the end in landfill. I mean, why? That's an environmental disaster.
Well,
the iPhone, another disaster. Why do we allow it? Why do we allow this thing right here?
Right.
Do you know what a pelican can do to that? Pelicans choke on these by the thousands. Why isn't there a movement to ban them?
I don't think that's exactly true, but I think we have Goodwill and we have vintage shops in many places where people recycle their clothes. So we recycle electronics. So balloons, though, completely useless. We do not need those. We need our phones and we need to get dressed. So,
Okay.
Yeah,
not as useless as the iPhone, I would argue, but you know what? I'm not the liberal Sherpa here. Kathy, great to see you. Thank you very much.
Good to see you.
Well, elites in Washington on both sides, left and right, are threatened, really threatened, by the rise of populism. Now they're teaming up, think tank on the right, think tank on the left, to fight the popular will. We'll speak to one representative of that movement next. Well, the real divide in Washington isn't between conservatives or liberals. It's between conservatives and liberals and populists, people who oppose the status quo. Almost everyone in Washington supports the status quo. Why wouldn't they? It's given them a sense of status. It's made them rich. They have nothing to gain from populism, which is why they hate it. Washington, D.C. voted for Hillary Clinton in numbers that resemble a communist sham election. Literally, I think 96%. Now, in an ultimate display of the way things really are in D.C., two rival think tanks, purportedly rival think tanks, the Center for American Progress on the left and the American Enterprise Institute on the right, have teamed up to publish a paper criticizing populism. Dalibor Rohack is a research fellow at the American Enterprise Institute and is game enough to come on tonight and explain this to us. Thanks a lot for joining us tonight.
I'm delighted to join you, Tucker, for this display of preppy sartorial flair.
Oh, well, I love your tie. So let me ask you this. At least in the press release for this, this was described as an effort to support democracy and democratic values, and that's one of the reasons you oppose populist movements like Brexit. But look, isn't Brexit, by definition, an expression of democracy in that it was a popular vote?
Look, we are not arguing in the report that populism is always inherently bad. Nobody's blaming Donald Trump for crafting his political messages in a way that resonate with the base of his political party. But we are concerned in this report about two things. First of all, countries that have been governed by populist governments, whether it's far-left Syriza in Greece or right-wing governments in Poland and Hungary, have become increasingly authoritarian over time. Secondly, we are concerned that populist voices on the far left and on the far right have displayed an increasing degree of disdain and lack of understanding for the importance of Western alliances led by America. And I think there is an important case to be made for an argument about, what sort of alliances and what sort of global order Americans would like to see. I
think that is an important, and look, I think populist movements in general have a terrible track record. Hungary is not an authoritarian country. I think that's a false statement that you made, but I think you're right to be worried about populism. But let me just ask you this. Has anyone in D.C. paused for 15 seconds to ask why Donald Trump got elected? Maybe because they failed. They did a terrible job as stewards of the economy and of our foreign policy. So why not focus on how to make our elites better, less stupid, less self-involved, less greedy, less short-sighted?
But there is no single printed daily newspaper in Hungary that would be critical of the government as of now, because all these newspapers were bought up by oligarchs close to the government. But I take your point. I think there is a lot of soul searching going on. We can't go on pretending like the Iraq war never happened, like the financial crisis never happened, that globalization did not have its downside. This report acknowledges all these problems, and I think there needs to be an intelligent discussion about the way forward. And I don't see populist movements, whether in the United States or in Europe, addressing those issues in a compelling way. I grew up.
But why don't think tanks? So why don't we go back and the architects of the Iraq War, just to name one, or the bank bailout? Where are they now? Did they go to prison? No, they didn't. Some should have, but none of them did. And instead, they went on to get richer and more prominent. Has anyone considered why that was allowed to happen?
Well, look, I was a freshman in college when the decision to invade Iraq was made.
I'm not blaming you. I'm just wondering, why is there no focus on them, the villains here?
I'm happy to talk about accountability, but the thing is that, by and large, the post-1945 global order has been good for humankind. We are living through the most peaceful, most prosperous period in human history, and I think there is a lot that deserves to be sort of defended and protected. While
I think that's a reasonable. We're out of time, but I want to say I think that's a fair point that you made at the end, and I appreciate your coming on.
Thank you.
I hope you'll come back.
My pleasure.
Dalibor, thanks. That's it for us tonight. Tune in every night, 8 p.m. to the show that is the sworn enemy of lying, pomposity, smugness, and groupthink. And when we say sworn enemy, we're not joking at all. Those things are worth fighting. Have a great evening.